As you know, artificial intelligence is here, and so are the lawsuits. One of the biggest controversies is over art that's been generated by AI. Artists are saying this is the beginning of the end for them, and lawsuits are mounting up over legal concerns and claims of copyright infringement. So should AI be able to get a copyright over the work that it generates? What would that even look like? First, I should say, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a former investigative news reporter. But in just a moment, you will hear my interview with a lawyer who does a lot of work in this area of law. But I can tell you the very basics from my own research. As the current law stands, no, AI cannot have a copyright on something. So if you're concerned about using AI-generated art for your print-on-demand business, or the book cover you're designing, or your branding for your company, this video is going to answer a lot of those questions. Because there could be some gray area, and we're going to explain. But here's why AI right now cannot have a copyright on something that you ask it to generate. It's because copyright is reserved exclusively for humans. I say that because the legal precedent was actually set in a very public case, known as the monkey selfie case back in 2018. You might have seen it on the news. A monkey grabbed a photographer's camera and was able to take a photo of itself. Without going into all the little details, the organization PETA tried to claim that the monkey was the owner of that photo and had certain rights to that photo. But the courts decided, nope, only humans can be authors for the purpose of the Copyright Act. And I asked legal expert Steve Tolan about the reasons behind this current law and the current precedent that is underway.
That's a great question. The United States Copyright Office, at least so far, has definitively answered that question, and as recently as this month, that no one owns that. And the reason no one owns that is because it's not uniquely one person's artistic idea. So the way AI works, and you use sort of prompts. And so you come up with your own particular expression of phrases or ideas to enter into, you might call it a prompt box or a search box. And then you're hoping that the artificial intelligence software that you're using in that moment will then produce something. And then but the way it produces it, right, is that it goes through all other people's copyrighted works to then generate, quote unquote, its own unique thing based on your prompting. So the argument put forth by those who were attempting to copyright something that had been generated through AI software after their prompting was that, hey, I kind of created my own, it's my own freedom of expression of the prompting, right? It's hard to come up with the expression to generate this particular thing that I did, and it'd be very difficult to duplicate unless you knew exactly my phrasing or verbiage. So therefore, I'd like to copyright. And the Copyright Office said, no, it's not going to happen. And they were very clear about that. So right now, as we sit here today in 2023, no one owns them.
But with so much litigation out there, even right now, a lot could change in the future. By the way, if you find this type of content helpful, please hit the subscribe button and sign up for my free course on how to use AI to maximize your productivity, no matter your area of business. All right, we've heard a lot about DALL-E and other AI tools like Midjourney. A lot of people using it for print-on-demand businesses like Etsy or ebook covers produced with AI. For example, some people are using AI prompts with images of Picasso as inspiration. So Steve, I have to ask you, at this stage in 2023, what kind of risks should entrepreneurs be aware of when it comes to copyright when they're using this type of AI generation for their business itself?
What I would do if I were advising a client about that, and we do a fair amount of that, is we help clients like enforce trademark issues and copyrightable works, and then we advise people as they're starting a business on how they could do that legally. Let's take an easy example, and then we'll make something a little more complicated. If I were to take a Mickey Mouse and then say, I'd like Mickey Mouse as a Picasso image. Well, I don't know, and it reproduces sort of Mickey Mouse and it looks like a Picasso background. I think Disney would have a viable claim against me, right? Because I'm using Mickey Mouse, that's pretty clear. I don't know if Picasso's estate would necessarily have a claim because it's in the style of Picasso. It just depends on how, if you take a DALL-E painting that's recognizable, and then you sort of alter it a little bit, but not only is it in the style of a DALL-E, but it's also recognizable images. So that's the form and the medium, right, that DALL-E had copyrighted. That's clearly going to be in violation. So it's just kind of a fact-specific question. But if you were to take the general idea of, say, Monet and this watercolor image, and then that's it. But then you had your own, pictures of Town Lake. Let's say we're in Austin, Texas, and you had certain images, the Davenport Bridge, for example. No, I mean, that's an artist and a photographer can take their own photo. That's their own experience in that moment of what they took and how they experienced it. And then if they just copy the style of that artist, like a Monet, or to use your example, Christine Dali, that's probably okay.
What do you foresee for the future, and how can this actually be policed? It seems that this could be like a wildfire of litigation over AI and copyright infringement in all areas of business when it comes to this AI-generated art or logos.
I think where we're going, though, is a flood of litigation on the issue of AI. And I think that's just because of the massive amount of learning that the software does as it scans through all of these copyrighted works and uses them to then generate its own image based on your prompting. That question hasn't been answered yet. What do we do about that? Congress is obviously part of the antitrust lawsuit against Google on this issue. And the Department of Justice is very much policing this issue, to sort of get to your question about who's policing this. And the Department of Justice gets involved, strangely enough, because of antitrust arguments. So as class actions were filed arguing that Google and other big tech companies have monopolized data like this, they're trying to get into the ownership and control of like Google Nest and like all the prompting of the words you use on other devices like your smartwatch. As we start using AI, we'll start, giving prompts into our watch and talking to it to generate something. Or we'll start talking to our Google Nest in our kitchen or something. And so they want to start controlling that. That's part of the lawsuit. Alleges like, hey, before you allow big tech to go into that space, we need to come up with some better rules and regulations about this. So I think we're going to see a flood of lawsuits, and I think we're going to see some of these questions eventually answered, but it's unclear now.
And music is another area that we're seeing copyright concerns as well. In addition to those deep fake voices, whether it's a public figure like the president or a celebrity.
Right. It's kind of the same argument. And music to me is interesting. I think AI in that sense it's just that much faster, and it's just going to become that much more common. But that is not anything new in the music. In some ways, the music world has kind of already been prepared for these battles a little bit, because people could already, you see artists that have been sued before mixing or laying track, and you'll recognize a certain beat or something, or a melody or a sound. You can tell I'm not a music major, obviously. And you can tell, you'll recognize part of the song, right? And you're like, okay, but then they add their own expression to it. How did they get away with that? Well, because that original riff wasn't maybe that specific to that artist originally, and they made their own creative use of it. And so I think it's going to have the same impact. We're going to have lawsuits about it. And in some ways, music will be different, because here's the problem with AI lawsuits right now. It's hard to prove that your particular copyrighted work was used by the AI software to generate this final product that you're saying infringed your copyright. So what I mean by that is, if AI scans 1 million images or 10 million, whatever the algorithm, let's say it's several million, and then it produces something based on the prompting you gave it, how do you go back and sift through that and say, it's like tracing funds or something. If you're trying to sue somebody saying they stole from you and they put money in an offshore account in the middle of nowhere, you're like, how do you track or trace that your particular copyrighted work was the one that was infringed on? And then what are your damages based on, right? So those are typical problems of any lawsuit. And so that music to me is a little bit different, because I think you can recognize it, and it's more unique to that particular artist potentially, right? If it were, I'm gonna go back to my Springsteen reference earlier, maybe because I just saw him recently in concert, I'm still thinking about it. It was so cool and it's so unique. I think music has that effect on people, right? You can recognize it maybe easier. So in that sense, AI lawsuits about music may come faster and may set some tone or pace for the rest of these AI lawsuits about artistic copyrighted works, photographs, things like that. But all of this is up in the air and remains to be seen. We're just tracking it and following it as it goes.
So, Steve, what advice would you give to business owners who are currently using DALL-E or other AI tools like Midjourney to produce art for print on demand kind of companies, or book covers, or even visuals for their brand creation?
The easiest answer to feel safe about it is use AI to generate ideas. And then once you get, based on your prompting and expressions, some image created by that DALL-E or something, whatever software you're using, then be more creative after that. Then with your team, come up with your own version. So use it for inspiration, use it as a springboard or a basis if you really want to feel secure about it. And then once you alter it more to make it your own unique expression, you're clearly, I would think, depending on how well you do it, safe there, and immune from any type of liability. I think where you just take whatever AI gives you and then you use that as your logo, you potentially run a giant risk that 6 months or a year down the line, you've created branding for your company. You're launching, you're going, you're really excited about your logo. It's on everything. You've spent a fortune kind of promoting it. You might all of a sudden shockingly get a letter from a lawyer that says, hey, you are clearly violating our already registered and copyrighted logo, brand, image, name. And I've counseled so many businesses on this. It's a nightmare. When you spend a fortune on branding and you're really excited about it, and you find out, no, there's a Spanish winemaker, there's a restaurant, there's a whatever in another part of the world potentially that's already registered that.
Thank you so much for that great advice, Steve. We certainly appreciate it. Now, if you'd like the latest news on the emergence of AI and overall business tips that could improve your brand and media visibility, I'd love to have you hit the subscribe button. I'll be releasing a new video every week, and I'll see you on the next one.